Looking back on the past, war and peace have always accompanied us alternately. No matter how gentle and thrifty we are, we cannot be moderate in everything, or hope that careerists will give up.
After entering the dry season, it had not rained for an extended period, and most of the marshes on the grassland had dried up. The grass, which could grow up to half a person's height during the rainy season, had now become short and withered. Under the scorching sun, searching for the traces left by prey, Gaoang was tirelessly tracking a large antelope. Yes, Gaoang had not died. Remarkably fortunate for someone with a city dweller's physique, he survived 3 years in an unidentified part of Africa, at the junction of grasslands and tropical rainforests, far from modern civilization. Not everybody is that lucky. This was Gao Yang's third dry season in Africa, meaning he had been stranded there for 3 years. In this place, survival depended not on skills or possessions, but purely on luck, or perhaps on the resilience of life. This was certainly true for Gaoang. Gaoang was indeed very resilient. Once bitten by a venomous snake, although he had applied every possible remedy, he would have died without assistance. Fortuitously, he encountered a migrating primitive tribe who saved his life. Later, Gaoang learned that this tribe treated snake bites with traditional methods. He was lucky; they cured him, leaving only a large scar on the palm of his left hand. What could a primitive tribe use aside from unknown herbs? It relied on the blessings of whatever deity they believed in. It was said that with the deity's protection, the snake venom posed no real threat to Gaoang. Ironically, it was the deep cuts Gaoang inflicted on himself in panic that nearly cost him his life. The most perilous moment for Gaoang was not the snake bite, but the bout of malaria he suffered about a month after being saved, just as he began to move around. Despite consuming all his anti-malaria medication, there was no effect, and after over 10 days of continuous fevers, he became dangerously emaciated but miraculously survived. Over 3 years, Gaoang contracted malaria 4 times, virtually experiencing the full spectrum of the disease. Yet, he persisted, and it seemed he might have developed immunity, as this year he had yet to suffer an episode, seemingly freeing himself from this nightmare. Certainly, the main reason for Gao Yang's survival was the tribe that rescued him. Without those kind-hearted individuals, he would have died countless times over. The tribe that saved Gaoang was small and extremely primitive, numbering only 17 people, a large family, living a nomadic life relying on gathering and hunting. Gaoang was unaware of the tribe's ethnicity, only that their name was a coolie. The tribal chief, the oldest in the group, didn't know their ethnic origins either. The concept of ethnicity was foreign to a coolie. They only had the opportunity for intermarriage when encountering tribes like theirs. Given the highly primitive lifestyle, the mortality rate within the tribe could be easily deduced. During Gao Yang's 3 years with them, 4 children were born and 3 people died, the oldest being around 5 or 6 and the youngest living just 2 days. The chief was presumably in his 40s. Gaoang had inquired about the chieftain's age, but he didn't know himself, recalling only that he had survived over 40 rainy seasons. Gaoang, with his aptitude for language learning, mastered the tribe's simple language, with its limited vocabulary, in just a few months, allowing for hassle-free communication. However, his access to information from these primitive people was extremely limited. To this day, Gaoang was uncertain of the country he was in or his location. He only knew he was at the crossroads of a tropical grassland and rainforest. Traveling north for a couple of days would lead to sparsely wooded savanna, and heading south for the same duration would lead to tropical rainforest. Unfamiliar with Africa's geography, he couldn't deduce his whereabouts from the landscape. For 3 years, Gaoang constantly thought of home, yet he had not once encountered a trace of civilization. The Akuli tribe was isolated from the world because they had moved to escape conflict, deliberately migrating away from civilization. At one time, people from the modern world had visited the Akuli tribe, bringing modern artifacts as gifts. But then war broke out. Armed individuals killed indiscriminately, even for sport. After 3 tribal members were killed on a hunting trip, the tribe began their continuous migration. Over the years, neither the tribe nor Gaoang had encountered anyone else, severing any contact with the outside world. Gaoang had explored in all directions, venturing as far as 7 or 8 days' travel without finding anything. Now, the thought of finding the river he had followed on his way here seemed impossible. During his 3 years with the coolie, Gaoang accompanied the tribe on daily hunts. At a total of 5 hunters including Gaoang, the rest of the tribe, women and children, gathered any edible plants and insects. Without their success, the tribe went hungry. Thanks to past interactions with the modern world, a coolie had metal tools. There were 6 knives and 4 spears in the tribe, crudely made but functional. The chief mentioned these were gifts from very pale strangers. Nonetheless, the primary hunting tools were bows and arrows, using the knives and spears only for the final blow, which was rarely needed because most prey died from the arrows. Now, Gaoang and the other 4 men were tracking an antelope poisoned by their arrows. After the arrival of the dry season, most of the marshes that were prevalent on the grasslands had dried up, leaving only a few larger ones with water. These became water sources for all nearby animals, making hunting much simpler than in the rainy season. They only had to brave the risk of predators and wait by the water holes to shoot their prey with poison arrows. The large antelope they were pursuing had been shot by the marshes. The bow's power was negligible. The main effect came from the poison on the arrowheads. Extracted from the larvae of a beetle, this poison was lethal but had a delayed effect. For larger game, it required at least a couple of hours to take effect. The 2 poisoned arrows lodged in the hefty 200-pound antelope would take about 4 or 5 hours to kill it. The antelope bolted in panic after being shot, outpacing any human. The poison arrow took time to kill, so the tribe's hunting method involved following the animal's tracks until they collapsed. Tracking distances varied, with several tens of kilometers being quite normal. They continued until their prey was found, so the tribe's hunting abilities might not be sophisticated, but their tracking and endurance were exceptional. The coolie could identify their target among chaotic tracks, determine the direction from broken vegetation, and even deduce how long it would take for their game to succumb. Nearly 3 years together had honed Gao Yang's tracking skills, yet when hunting with the chieftain, he rarely had the chance to display them. They had been chasing the antelope since dawn, and by midday, having jogged continuously, Gaoang estimated they'd covered at least 30 to 40 kilometers. He was near his limit, but the coolie seemed unfazed. In the past, the mere thought of Gaoyang jogging such distances would be preposterous. Just walking 3 kilometers would have been extremely taxing. But under the pressure of survival, he had tapped into a remarkable well of resilience, now capable of running such distances effortlessly. Finally, the leader at the forefront stopped and studied the ground before pointing in a direction.
It's near its end, just there. Let's find it.
The chieftain announced. Hearing this, Gaoang was relieved. The chase had taken much less time than anticipated, and an earlier conclusion was always welcome since they'd have to carry the meat back across the same distance. Gasping for breath, Gaoyang followed the chieftain forward, and, after about a kilometer or 2, they spotted their target. 200 to 300 meters ahead, a large antelope stood wavering, about to collapse any moment. Arm in arm with the leading chieftain and waving his hunting knife excitedly, Gaoyang charged toward the doomed antelope. They needed to act fast to prevent lions or leopards from claiming their prey. It was common for their prey to be snatched away. After painstakingly tracking their game, they might find the creature, rendered immobile, being devoured by lions or hyenas. During such occasions, they could only return empty-handed. As the chief approached the antelope, a figure suddenly leaped from the nearby bushes, knocking the great antelope to the ground. Gaoang, at the rear, saw clearly that a leopard had pounced on the prey. The chief, now face-to-face with the leopard, inadvertently found himself in a struggle for the meal. Gaoang quickly understood why the normally cautious leopard would confront them. This leopard was old, and its hunting abilities diminished. Now emaciated with hunger, the incapacitated antelope was an irresistible lure to the ravenous, senior leopard, which was not willing to surrender its catch. The proximity was dangerous, and the deep growl of the leopard with its mouth wide open signaled the threat. The chief stood less than 2 meters from the leopard, spreading his arms wide and slowly retreating. The others, including Gaoang, did the same. It was dangerous to compete with a hungry leopard for food, even a weakened one, especially at such close range. The explosive power of a 4-legged animal was beyond human comprehension. Even with 5 people present, they couldn't provoke the leopard. They had to retreat to a safe distance before they could potentially scare it off together. As the chief backed away, the leopard suddenly released the antelope. Like lightning, it sprang toward him. The chief barely managed to protect his neck by drawing his arms in, but was knocked down. The large leopard bent its head and went straight for his throat, clamping down but not releasing. Fortunately, the chief's last-minute defense spared him from a fatal bite. Seeing the chief tackled, Gaoang roared and charged forward, knife in hand. The other 3, wielding spears, struck the leopard, which then released its grip on the chief. The creature lunged forward again, leaving its mark with deep claw gashes on one man's thigh before finally fleeing. Frustrated and dismayed, Gaoang felt a chill. Leopards were among Africa's top predators. An animal bitten in the neck by a leopard had almost no chance of survival. The chief clutched his neck while blood oozed between his fingers. Everyone else was paralyzed with fear, merely standing and shouting. Only Gaoang remained somewhat calm. He rushed to the chief's side, pried the hands away from the neck to assess the wounds. By protecting his throat in time, the chief avoided having his throat pierced, but the leopard's canines had left 2 deep punctures in the right side of his neck that were still bleeding. The leopard had also left a row of deep tooth marks on the chief's right arm. Gaoang gasped, covering the chief's neck wound, his mind in turmoil as he desperately thought of how to save the chief's life. The more he pondered, the more panicked he became. By all accounts, the chief seemed doomed. In a stroke of luck, the leopard had not severed the chief's throat or a major artery. With basic surgery, the bleeding could be stopped, but in their current situation, he would slowly bleed to death. Even if by chance the bleeding stopped, the wound would likely get infected without antibiotics, leading to a prolonged and painful demise. As a carnivore, a leopard's mouth and claws carry many bacteria and viruses. Whether bitten or clawed, without antibiotics, any wound was potentially lethal. After 3 years of close companionship, Gaoyang's affection for the chief was profound. Only moments ago the chief had been fine, and now Gaoang could only watch helplessly as he succumbed. Though he tried to restrain himself, tears fell uncontrollably. The chief, knowing his time was short, pushed Gaoyang's hands away and stood up slowly. Shaking his head at Gaoang with a hoarse voice, he said,
Don't cry. I'm old now. We all have our day. Daboli, if you survive, you are the chief. If you also die, then let Kosuto be the chief. Stop crying. Let's deal with the great antelope, eat something, and then take the meat home.
Dad, you won't die, you definitely won't.
Kasuto, the youngest at 14 or 15, not as composed as his older siblings, after speaking finally began to cry loudly. Upon hearing the chief's words, Gaoang remembered that Dabali, the chief's eldest son, had been injured as well, implying that he too might succumb to infection. Distraught, Gaoang said,
This is wrong. There must be a way. There must be something we can do to save you. Let me think. Just be quiet and let me think.
The chief's face turned sorrowful as he lost blood and sat down shakily.
White child. There is no more help to be had. Death brought by a leopard is inescapable.
Unable to think of a solution, Gaoang watched despairingly as the chief neared his end. The distress made him restless, and after pacing breathlessly, unable to bear it any longer, he roared and sprinted in the direction the leopard had vanished into. Gaoang knew that catching the leopard wouldn't change anything, but he felt compelled to find it, to kill it for vengeance. That seemed to be the only way to ease his pain. Gaoang chased the leopard's trail, its dripping blood providing a clear path. Not long after, about 3 to 5 minutes into the chase, Gaoang abruptly stopped, staring blankly at the unexpected tracks on the grass. Tire tracks, evidence of at least 4 to 5 vehicles. The discovery left him in disbelief.
White child. Stop. We can't go now, we have to take care of Dad and Dabali.
The calling and approaching footsteps brought Gaoang back to reality. A chill ran through him as he turned to face Kasuto and the other boy who had followed. He shouted back.
Go back, quickly!
After shouting, Gaoang didn't wait to explain to the confused boys but turned and ran back to the chief at a faster pace.
Chief, don't leave here. Wait for me, you and Dabali can be saved. I've found.
Excited to tell the chief help was at hand, Gaoang struggled to explain his discovery. The tribe's language had no words for tire tracks.
I found traces that could lead us to the white men, like me. They have strange medicines. They can save you and Dabali. Don't leave, wait for me. I'll find those white people.
Now understanding what had happened, everyone, including Kasuto, became excited at the prospect of saving the chief and Dabali.
Kusuto, stay and help Dad and Dabali. I'll go with the white child to find them.
No, you're not as fast as me. My name is Cheetah. I'll go with the white child. You are stronger. You protect the injured Dad and Dabali.
You two be quiet. I'll go alone. Listen, if you hear gunshots, run immediately. Do you know what gunshots sound like? Chief, you've heard gunshots before, right? If you hear them, leave here. Don't wait for me. If there's no gunfire, wait here, but be careful. Understand?
The chief shook his head and grabbed the agitated Gaoang.
Don't go. You don't know who they are. They are very wicked. You die.
Gaoang pushed the chief's hand away, smiling.
If I'm not back by this time tomorrow, you go back on your own. Don't worry, Chief. You know I'm the same kind of person as them. I'll be fine.
After some hesitation, the chief finally nodded.
I forgot you. Also a strange white man. Go then. Let Kusuto go with you. Be careful. White child, I'll go with you. I can help you if anything happens.
Gaoang thought it made sense to take Kasuto. In case of emergency, there would be someone to send a message. Without further hesitation, Gaoang and Kasuto followed the tire tracks quickly. It wasn't difficult to discern the vehicle's direction from the grassland wheel ruts, and Gaoang could tell they were recent. If they were fortunate, they might find the convoy soon. Even though anxious, Gaoang paced himself, careful not to exhaust his energy. He was mindful of the long day he had already endured without food. Kasuto was much faster, often causing Gaoang to call him back so they wouldn't separate too much. In the language of the A Kuli, Bali meant lion, and Kasuto meant cheetah. The young boy lived up to his name, the youngest, but indeed the fastest. In his heart, Gaoang had always been worried. On the African continent, and especially in this remote corner, the most likely encounter would be with black people, possibly of the dangerous sort. Recalling the gunfire he had encountered upon his arrival 3 years ago, Gaoang felt the likelihood of running into an unidentified group of armed militants or poachers was high. But he wasn't going to be content without finding out, so he decided that if the people he encountered seemed to be non-threatening civilians, he would ask for help, but if they seemed dangerous, then he would leave quietly. Gaoang had always hoped to encounter people from the civilized world, but now that the traces of civilization had appeared, he was feeling apprehensive. After hearing the chief describe the cruel and murderous acts of those with unclear origins, Gaoang prayed that he would meet genuinely civilized individuals, not those who wore the mask of civilization but acted no better than beasts. After about 3 to 4 hours of running, Gaoang was struggling to keep going, moving at what was more of a slow walk. Kasuto, who had always run ahead, suddenly stopped and came running back to Gaoang.
White child, there are many people over there, and some strange things.
Gaoang was even more excited than Kasuto at hearing this. He ran forward and soon saw 4 vehicles parked about 400 to 500 meters away. There were 3 off-road vehicles and 1 medium-sized truck, and behind them, there were several large tents. However, Gaoang didn't see any people. After surveying for a moment, Gaoang decided to go in closer. He grabbed Kasuto and crouched down, speaking earnestly.
Listen, Kusuto, if you hear loud gunshots, or hear me telling you to run, you must run back quickly. Bring Kumpton back home. If you hear me call your name, come to find me, understand?
I know, if I hear gunshots, or hear you tell me to run, I will save you. If you die, I will run.
Although Kasuto was from a primitive tribe, it didn't mean he was foolish. Gaoang patted Kasuto on the shoulder, picked up his bow and arrows, and began approaching the convoy while crouched low. As he drew nearer, about 200 meters away through a gap between the vehicles, Gaoang saw some people but couldn't make out their attire. Changing direction and circling around the vehicles until they no longer obstructed his view, Gaoang saw a campsite with 5 large tents. In the center was a sunshade net under which stood 2 large tables, and about 15 or 16 black people were gathered beneath it. The attire of these people somewhat relieved Gaoang. Although 2 were wearing camouflage, most were in plain clothes. Gaoang noticed only 2 with guns, and while not entirely clear, he thought one was the common AK-47 series in Africa, and the other seemed likely a double-barreled shotgun. Feeling lucky, Gaoang thought these people did not look like a military unit or poachers. Just then, the gathered crowd dispersed, revealing a sight that delighted Gaoang. 4 white people were sitting under the sunshade net, and one of them was fiddling with a large video camera. Seeing this calmed Gaoang entirely.
Hello! Help me! I need help!
Gaoang shouted and ran out from his hiding place in the bushes, heading straight for the white people. It was not surprising that Gaoang was emotional, not only because the chief and Dab Ali could be saved, but also because he finally had the chance to go home. The people under the sunshade net, both the white people and the recently dispersed blacks, were shocked by Gao Yang's sudden appearance. Several of the armed black people immediately aimed their guns at Gao Yang. It was then that he realized there weren't just 2 armed men but 5. Gao Yang was close to the white people, but when he saw the weapons aimed at him, he stopped and raised his hands. Right then, he heard someone exclaim,
"Don't shoot! Drop your guns! Don't shoot! See what he wants! Damn it! Put down your guns! You'll scare him! Everyone step back! Don't frighten him! Daniel, are you getting this on camera?"
Witnessing the guns lower and the crowd of black people retreat, with just a few white people smiling at him, Gao Yang approached the white man who spoke, saying,
Hello.
when a woman exclaimed,
Oh my god, what am I seeing? He's wearing boots.
Stop talking! Don't make a fuss! Don't scare him! Don't provoke his hostility! Heavens! Have you all lost your minds?
Only then did Gao Yang realize his mistake. He had been speaking the language of the A Coolie tribe for 3 years, so what he had shouted was thoroughly understandable only by the A Coolie.
Sir, please help me.
Gao Yang stopped mid-sentence because he realized he was speaking in Chinese. After lightly slapping his own mouth for his overly excited state, he was about to switch to English when the white-haired old man in front of him did the same, smiling and saying,
Do as he does! It must be their way of showing friendliness.
A series of crisp slaps rang out as everyone in front of Gao Yang mimicked the gesture, some quite loudly. With a wry smile, Gao Yang finally managed to say in English,
Hello, sir. I'm very glad to see you. I am in very urgent need of help. People are dying. Please help us.
Although he hadn't spoken English in years, Gao Yang's speech was well articulated. The elderly man across from him widened his mouth in shock and stared, trembling lips murmuring.
Oh God, can someone tell me what's happening?
When Gao Yang first arrived in Africa during the rainy season, he was dressed in a quick-dry shirt and pants. They dried fast and were cool, but also thin and not durable. After roughing it out on the savannah, his clothes were tattered. However, the Danner military boots he wore had weathered the 3 years unscathed. Now, Gao Yang was wearing his 6-inch army boots, his waist wrapped with straw, and his body painted with geometric patterns made from white and red clays. After 3 years of sun exposure, his skin was dark and shiny. He had just trimmed his hair with a knife, leaving short and uneven stubble. Aside from his skin being more brown than the purely black members of the A Coolie tribe, Gao Yang's appearance was hardly distinguishable from his tribe mates, aside from the fact that he still had a pair of boots on his feet. Thus, when they saw a man looking like he came from a primitive tribe speaking fluent English, their astonishment was understandable. The old man in front of Gao Yang appeared to be in a state of shock, staring and gauging Gao Yang up and down, but soon a young woman stepped forward.
Professor, it's clear he's asking for help. We can discuss the details later, but for now, we need to find out what help he needs.
The professor snapped out of his daze, smiling apologetically at Gao Yang before asking eagerly.
I apologize. I was a bit overwhelmed. Let's get to the important matters. Please tell me what's happening.
There are injured people in our tribe. One has been bitten on the neck by a leopard with 2 wounds about half an inch deep. It hasn't severed the major artery, but I suspect some smaller blood vessels have been damaged. It doesn't look good. He will need surgery and possibly a blood transfusion. Another was scratched by the leopard. So we need antibiotics. Sir, he's been injured for about 3 to 4 hours. There isn't much time left. Please help us, sir.
Where are the injured?
Gao Yang pointed in the direction he came from.
Over there, probably more than 20 kilometers away. I'm not too sure. I ran for about 3 to 4 hours to get here.
The professor immediately turned and yelled to others.
Did you all hear that? Evan, get your medical kit. Do we have anything to transfuse blood? If so, bring that. Daniel, grab the small camera. We're going by car, quickly.
The woman in front of Gao Yang added urgently.
Professor, I'm coming too, and we need to take at least 2 armed guards. It's not safe here.
After speaking, the woman smiled apologetically at Gao Yang.
I'm sorry, we have to bring guns. Please understand this isn't against you or your tribe, it's Africa, there are many dangerous animals, we need guns for protection.
Gaoang nodded understandingly, saying sincerely to the people before him.
That's fine. I understand very well. Thank you for your willingness to help. Thank you.
Let's get moving. We can talk later. Gentlemen, please hurry. Once everything is ready, we'll set out.
After the professor finished speaking, he rushed to pack up, and everyone hastily loaded the necessary items into 2 off-road vehicles. In just a few minutes, everything was ready, and the professor gestured Gaoang.
Get in the car. You lead the way. Let's go.
7 people, 4 white and 3 black, all got into 2 off-road vehicles under Gaoyang's guidance and set off the way he had come. Once out of the camp, Gaoang had the vehicles stop to call out Kasuto, who then also got into the cars. With Kasuto aboard, they set off again, racing back. Sitting in the swiftly moving off-road vehicle, Gaoang was swamped with a multitude of thoughts as the chance to return home had suddenly appeared out of the blue. Gaoang was, of course, no stranger to riding in a car, but for Kasuto, being in a fast-moving vehicle for the first time filled him with fear, and he clung tightly to Gaoyang's arm and refused to let go. However, it didn't take long for his curiosity to overcome his fear. The cameraman named Daniel never ceased filming, even though it seemed unlikely that anything remarkable could be captured in such a bumpy ride. There was so much that Gaoang wanted to know, and now that he finally had the chance to ask, the professor, Buck Rodney, preempted him.
Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Buck Rodney, and this beautiful lady beside me is Kathleen Taylor. Please forgive my curiosity, but who exactly are you? Where did you learn English? If you don't mind my asking, you don't seem to belong to the same ethnic group as this true native.
It's an honor to meet you all. It's my good fortune. My name is Gao Yang, and I'm from Huaxia. I survived a plane crash and was then saved by the people of the Akuli tribe. I've lived with them for about 3 years.
Everyone in the vehicle with Gaoang was more curious about him than Kasuto was about the car, and their bewilderment was finally addressed, eliciting a collective "oh" of astonishment.
My goodness, you're really lucky. Could you please share your story? It must be quite remarkable.
I would be happy to talk about my experiences. But right now I'm really worried about the chief. We've lived together for 3 years. He's my family now. I'm sorry, but I can't talk about anything else at the moment.
I'm sorry, my curiosity came at an inopportune time. God willing, your chief will be all right.
After apologizing, Professor Rodney restrained his intense curiosity, and everyone traveled in silence. It turned out that the area where Gaoang had been hunting wasn't far from Professor Rodney's camp, just about a 20-minute drive. Slowing down the car, Gaoang and Kasuto soon affirmed they had arrived. When Gaoang and the group found the chief, he was lying motionless on the ground, with Dabali and Balili sitting tearfully by his side, trying to swat away the flies swarming around. A chill ran through Gaoang, fearing the worst that the chief might have already passed. As he stood frozen in front of the chief, dread holding him back from confirming his fears, the accompanying doctor rushed to the chief's side. After checking his carotid pulse, the doctor loudly proclaimed,
He's not dead. Let me examine him.
Donning rubber gloves, the doctor inspected the chief's neck wounds and pupils, then brought out various instruments to check his blood pressure and respiration. Dabali and Balili stood by anxiously yet hopefully, their concern for their father overshadowing everything else. Soon, there was good news from the doctor. He's lucky. The leopard's teeth missed the main blood vessels. It just broke 2 smaller ones. But his condition is still dire. He has lost at least 2 pints of blood and must have a transfusion. I'm going to check his blood type. Also, if anyone here has O-type blood and is willing to donate, please let me know. Gaoang didn't have O-type blood, and the chief's blood type was quickly tested. It was A+ type. Alas, Gaoyang's blood type was B, meaning he couldn't donate his blood to the chief, and no one else present had a matching blood type either. Fortunately, Dabali and the rest were the chief's children and likely had the same blood type. Gaoang explained to them that the white sorcerer needed to use their blood to revive the chief, and that they only needed to take a little blood first. As the doctor was testing the blood of Dabali and the others, Kathleen stepped forward with a smile, softly offering, I have O-type blood, and I volunteer to donate. Evan, you can draw my blood first. The doctor seriously cautioned her. Kathleen, you must understand that I only have the equipment for person-to-person blood transfusion. Although I can ensure the equipment is safe and clean, direct transfusion is highly risky due to the difficulty in controlling blood quantity. There have been cases of death during transfusion. It doesn't matter. I must save him. I cannot stand by at this time. You can take my blood first while their blood types are still being tested. Kathleen appeared very young, around 23 or 24 years old, with a height of about 170 centimeters, short brown hair, and delicate features. Her uncommon courage and compassion made her beauty all the more radiant. In Gao Yang's eyes, Kathleen truly seemed like an angel. With tubing that had 2 needles connected, the doctor bridged Kathleen in the chief's arms. After repeatedly warning her to alert him if she felt dizzy, the doctor commenced cleaning the chief's wounds. Since treating the wounds would cause further bleeding, it was necessary to clean while transfusing blood. Grateful to Kathleen, Gaoang couldn't quite find the words to express his appreciation. After hesitating, he gave Kathleen a deep bow, emotionally expressing, "Miss Kathleen, on behalf of the entire Akuli tribe, thank you for your help. According to Huaxia and Akuli traditions, I must repay you. I assure you I will." Soon after, the blood types of Dabali and the others were confirmed. Unsurprisingly, they were all A+ type. The doctor joyfully announced that the chief could be saved if 4 people donated blood and that the donors themselves would be fine. Donning rubber gloves, the doctor inspected the chief's neck wounds and pupils, then brought out various instruments to check his blood pressure and respiration. Dabali and Balili stood by anxiously yet hopefully, their concern for their father overshadowing everything else. Soon, there was good news from the doctor.
He's lucky. The leopard's teeth missed the main blood vessels. It just broke 2 smaller ones. But his condition is still dire. He has lost at least 2 pints of blood and must have a transfusion. I'm going to check his blood type. Also, if anyone here has O-type blood and is willing to donate, please let me know.
Gaoang didn't have O-type blood, and the chief's blood type was quickly tested. It was A+ type. Alas, Gaoyang's blood type was B, meaning he couldn't donate his blood to the chief, and no one else present had a matching blood type either. Fortunately, Dabali and the rest were the chief's children and likely had the same blood type. Gaoang explained to them that the white sorcerer needed to use their blood to revive the chief, and that they only needed to take a little blood first. As the doctor was testing the blood of Dabali and the others, Kathleen stepped forward with a smile, softly offering,
I have O-type blood, and I volunteer to donate. Evan, you can draw my blood first.
The doctor seriously cautioned her.
Kathleen, you must understand that I only have the equipment for person-to-person blood transfusion. Although I can ensure the equipment is safe and clean, direct transfusion is highly risky due to the difficulty in controlling blood quantity. There have been cases of death during transfusion.
It doesn't matter. I must save him. I cannot stand by at this time. You can take my blood first while their blood types are still being tested.
Kathleen appeared very young, around 23 or 24 years old, with a height of about 170 centimeters, short brown hair, and delicate features. Her uncommon courage and compassion made her beauty all the more radiant. In Gaoyang's eyes, Kathleen truly seemed like an angel. With tubing that had 2 needles connected, the doctor bridged Kathleen in the chief's arms. After repeatedly warning her to alert him if she felt dizzy, the doctor commenced cleaning the chief's wounds. Since treating the wounds would cause further bleeding, it was necessary to clean while transfusing blood. Grateful to Kathleen, Gaoang couldn't quite find the words to express his appreciation. After hesitating, he gave Kathleen a deep bow, emotionally expressing,
Miss Kathleen, on behalf of the entire Akuli tribe, thank you for your help. According to Huaxia and Akuli traditions, I must repay you. I assure you I will.
Soon after, the blood types of Dabali and the others were confirmed. Unsurprisingly, they were all A+ type. The doctor joyfully announced that the chief could be saved if 4 people donated blood and that the donors themselves would be fine. After the 4 donors had taken turns donating blood, the doctor retracted the transfusion tubing and declared transfusion could cease. If all went well, the chief's life was most likely saved. Just as the transfusion was ending, the chief regained consciousness, at which point everyone finally relaxed. After the doctor treated the minor wounds of the chief and Dabali and administered antibiotics, signifying the conclusion of the ordeal, an ecstatic Gaoang began hugging and thanking everyone who had come. After hugging Kathleen last and expressing his gratitude, Gaoang sheepishly stepped back with a nervous smile, realizing he might have hugged her a bit too tightly. Fortunately, Kathleen did not appear to be upset. Although the chief and Dab Ali could not communicate with Professor Rodney and the others, they still tried their best to express their gratitude and offered their sincerest blessings. Amidst the cheerful banter, the walkie-talkie on the professor's waist suddenly crackled to life.
We've been attacked! We're under attack at the camp! Professor, leave this place quickly! Don't come back! They've killed everyone!
The unexpected voice transmission, accompanied by gunfire, silenced the jubilant scene. The professor grabbed the walkie-talkie, about to press the button to speak when it crackled again.
Oh God, Charlie's been shot! They're going to catch me! They're numerous! Help! No, don't come back! It's a setup! They'll kill everyone! They're likely looking for you too! For God's sake, run! Leave this damn country! Save!
The frantic and chaotic voice on the other end of the walkie-talkie was interspersed with urgent gunshots, which stopped abruptly with a gunshot signifying a chilling end to the plea. After the radio transmission abruptly stopped, Professor Rodney appeared shocked. He pressed the transmit button and shouted,
"How are you now? Respond! Answer me, Abbott!"
There was no response from the walkie-talkie. After waiting for a moment, Professor Rodney pressed the button again.
Abbott, respond to me! How are you, Abbott?
Gaolang snatched the walkie-talkie from Professor Rodney's hand with one swift move and shouted at the professor.
Professor, you must understand, Abbott is gone. Don't waste his final effort. What you're doing is drawing the attackers here. The best thing you can do now is to leave immediately.
Professor Rodney bellowed.
No, I must take responsibility for my people. I have to go back. I need to return to the camp.
Gaolang grabbed Professor Rodney, who was turning to run towards the vehicles, and yelled,
Do you want to head back to die? Now is not the time to go back to the camp and die. It's to get the living out of here. The living are more important than the dead.
At this moment, an armed blackguard rushed over, grabbing Professor Rodney's hand fiercely and shouting,
Leave this place! Let's get out of here! Fast! Everyone at the camp is dead! You heard it just now! Listen to him! The living are more important than the dead! I can't let you all die here too!
After a painful roar from Professor Rodney, he relented.
We leave! Quickly! Gao Yang, tell your people to leave with us!
Gaolang yelled towards the chief and the others.
Follow me! Get on this thing!
As Gaolang was speaking, he suddenly felt a heat on his face, and as he instinctively reached out to wipe his face, he heard a gunshot. When the gunshot sounded, Gaolang was shocked to find that one of the armed blackguards standing beside him had fallen to the ground. Then, after another gunshot, a second armed guard also fell. Only then did Gaolang realize what was happening. He pushed the professor down to the ground and screamed with all his might.
Sniper! Get down, everyone! Get down!
After Gaoyang's shout, the group, as if awakening from a trance, frantically dropped to the ground. Gaolang dashed over to Kasuto, tackling him to the ground as he shouted again in the A-Kuli language.
Get down! Stay on the ground!
Kathleen, though somewhat panicked, remained composed as she whispered from the ground.
They've been following us. Who are they?
Gaoyang's heart was pounding as he scanned the horizon from the ground. He couldn't see anyone, and while the direction of the sniper's shots gave a general idea of the shooter's position, he couldn't tell where the bullets were coming from or how many snipers there were. Gaolang, lying on the ground, addressed Professor Rodney.
Find cover, go behind the vehicles, crawl, do it quickly.
Gaolang had to repeat his instruction in the A-Kuli language. While everyone else began to crawl toward the vehicles, Gaolang reached for a double-barreled shotgun beside him, unfastened the ammunition belt from the fallen black man, and took it into his hands. Their location was a vast plain, but the spot where they took cover happened to be a small depression covered with weeds. As long as they didn't stand up, they wouldn't be seen unless the enemy approached. So after Gaolang and the others got down, the sniper did not fire at people anymore but shot at the engines of the cars instead. Fortunately, the two vehicles were parked side by side, so the sniper could only hit the one on the outside. Gaolang took a brief look at the shotgun in his hand. It was an old-fashioned 12-gauge side-by-side with two triggers, one for each barrel, and it was a high-quality Belgian FN, well-maintained. Gaolang was more than familiar with this type of shotgun. He used to shoot with an Italian Beretta side-by-side, which only differed from the one he had in his hand in that it had a single trigger for sports purposes. Opening the shotgun's chamber, Gaoang inspected the loaded ammunition, 1 slug and 100 buckshot, also known as 9 pellet. The 00 buckshot was loaded with 9 lead balls, and the slug, a single large lead ball, was capable of taking down elephants and rhinos within 30 meters. The ammunition belt had 22 more shells, mostly 6 pellet and 9 pellet buckshot, with only 5 slugs. Armed with the familiar shotgun, Gaoang felt slightly more composed. However, shotguns are only effective at close range. At a distance, they are of little use. Gaoang felt he needed to get his hands on another black man's AK-47. To get the AK-47, Gaoang faced a problem. Not only was the body of the black man holding AK-47 some distance away, but it was also at the edge of the hollow. To get the AK-47, Gaoang would inevitably expose half of his body. At that time, Professor Rodney and the others had already taken cover behind the cars, but Gaoang remained in place. Professor Rodney whispered to Gaoang.
Come here quickly. We need to think of a way to get out.
Gaoang gestured to the professor and then slowly crawled to the body of the black man with the AK-47. Suddenly lunging, he grabbed the man's foot and quickly pulled himself down, taking advantage of the body's cover to drag it into the hollow. Gaoang could have just taken the gun and left, not bothering to retrieve the body. However, upon seeing an ammunition pack on the black man, he decided otherwise. While dragging the body back, bullets whizzed by Gaoyang's ears. Despite this, he didn't forget to assess the situation. Unfortunately, he discovered that at least 20 men were encircling them in a semicircle and were less than 200 to 300 meters away. Action had to be taken immediately. Gaoang urgently addressed Professor Rodney.
They are numerous, at least 20. We're about to be surrounded. You must leave immediately. Don't think about driving. Follow our people to our tribe. I'll hold them off.
No, we leave together. Quick, we still have a chance.
Gaoang grew impatient, raising his voice.
Do you think it's possible? Without someone holding them off, none of US will escape. Stop talking nonsense. Follow our people, quickly.
After speaking, Gaoang called out to the chief in the A-Kuli language.
Take them back to the tribe, stay low, and start running once you are far away. Staying here won't help me. I'll come back to find you. If there's danger, leave the tribe. I'll be able to find you.
Though weak, the chief made a follow-me gesture to Professor Rodney and the others and started crawling out. As the tribal chief, he had a responsibility to lead his people back to the tribe. Professor Rodney knew Gaoang was right. Without a delay, none of them would stand a chance. Reluctantly, he tossed his walkie-talkie to Gaoang.
Kathleen has another one. You can contact us with this. You know how to use it. God bless you. You must come back.
After saying this, Professor Rodney also began to follow the chief, crawling behind him. Meanwhile, Kathleen looked deeply at Gaoang before saying,
You're very brave, truly brave. The brave won't easily perish. You'll surely return.
As everyone started crawling, Gaoang strapped the shotgun belt around his waist, hung the AK-47 ammunition pouch on his chest, slung the shotgun on his back, and fully armed himself. Afterwards, he casually hung the walkie-talkie on the bullet belt around his waist. The ammunition pouch had 4 magazines plus the one on the gun. If the magazines were full, Gaoang had 150 rifle rounds. Although there were far more enemies this time, having ample ammunition meant Gaoang was much more relaxed than during the last battle, especially since he had no injuries and could move more freely. At this point, the professors had crawled a short distance away. After taking a deep breath, Gaoang, cradling his gun, crawled to the edge of the hollow and realized that the encircling enemies were now very close, less than 100 meters away. Firing upon so many people at that distance, he felt, would be absurd unless he had absolute courage or was incredibly foolish. Without hesitation, Gaoang fired at the 2 men leading the group. While an AK-47 was far from precise, at a distance of only 70 or 80 meters, it was as effective as a precision sniper rifle in Gaoyang's hands. The sound of gunfire rang out, and as the men fell, Gaoang immediately rolled aside. Almost instantly, a barrage of bullets hit the spot from where he had fired. But by then, Gaoang had already crawled to the other end of the hollow. With the enemy so near, Gaoang could see the approaching foes from within the hollow, advancing in a line about 10 meters apart, guns at the ready and quickly approaching. Gaoang aimed at the leading man and fired, bringing him down. Then, without moving from his spot, he quickly shifted the gun barrel and fired 3 more times. Gao Long fired 4 shots in total, taking down 2 men. The power displayed by those shots made the enemies, who had been charging forward boldly due to their numbers, halt and take cover on the ground. When the sprinting enemies halted, Gao Long rolled again and began to move. He was not afraid of being hit by gunfire while in motion since the accuracy of shooting while running is meager. It was all a matter of luck. If he was hit in such circumstances, Gao Long would just have to chalk it up to bad luck. However, once the enemies had taken cover, he didn't dare remain a stationary target. As Gao Long moved, he heard a voice yell.
Give up on capturing them alive. Open fire with all you've got. Charge, kill them all.
Gao Long cursed under his breath. He now understood why the enemy's actions had seemed slower and less threatening than expected. They had been trying to take prisoners. Now that they had given up on capturing alive, Gao Yang's situation became even more perilous. The enemy commander signaled a full-on attack, but after Gao Yang's shots, no one dared take the initiative. Although the gunfire suddenly intensified, none of the enemies truly leaped forward to charge.